Thank you.
Good day to you. It seems Blackwall knows nothing about the disappearance of the Grey Wardens. It's a disappointment. I am, however, glad that he is with us, even if he was not what I expected. He seems to be a good man, and his experience will be an asset to the Inquisition. As for the other Wardens, I suppose we will have to keep looking.
Let's talk about you.
Me?
What did you do before you worked for the Divine?
I was a bard, an Orlesian spy for many years. For a time, I also served a small cloister in Lothering. After the Blight, the Divine called on me to oversee her personal network.
Can you teach me to be a bard?
Being a bard is so much more than being a spy. It involves a keen understanding of politics, the ebb and flow of influence, the great game. The Bard's is an intricate dance where a smile can be sharper than any dagger. The best way to learn is to immerse yourself in it. Perhaps when this is all over, I'll teach you.
Bards tell tales. I bet you tell some good ones.
There are plenty of tales in the library. Perhaps you should look for them there.
I should leave you to your work.
We can always talk later. Did you need something?
You seem to know a great many people.
I have made friends, and on occasion enemies. It's unavoidable.
You have a history with the Warden who ended the Blight, don't you?
He's always in my thoughts, even when we're far apart. My love is on a quest of his own. When the Inquisition has no further need of me, I will join him, for good this time. I have lost enough. I will not lose him as well.
They say you spent some time in Lothering. Did you know the Champion?
We spoke a few times. I seldom left the Chantry, and we never became more than casual acquaintances. I saw more of the Hawk twins. Bethany in particular. She would spend time in meditation at the Chantry, and she seemed to like my stories. The other one, the young man, he was a little surly. I did encounter the Champion again later in Kirkwall. Those were terrible times.
Was this when the Chantry was destroyed?
No, that happened later. But even then, the news coming out of Kirkwall was disheartening. There were some in Val Royeaux who wanted the Divine to declare an exalted march on Kirkwall. Justina sent me there to see if that could be avoided, to gather evidence to calm those agitating for war. I guess it didn't matter in the end.
We can continue this conversation later.
You know where I am.
Need something?
Can I ask you something, Varric?
You want to talk about me? I'm flattered. Also inclined toward extravagant lies.
Are you from Ferelden? Or Ley?
Free Marches, born and raised in Kirkwall. And despite whatever you've heard, no, Kirkwall's not that bad.
I'm not clear on your line of work. You're a merchant?
I'm a businessman. My family has a seat in the Dwarven Merchants Guild. Merchants buy and sell goods. Businessmen buy and sell stores. In my spare time, I manage a spy network, and occasionally, I write books.
If you run a spy network, why is Leliana our spy master?
To be honest with you, she's just a better spy master. The truly great ones can keep their distance. They don't get attached to their people. Me, I always wind up babysitting my informants and worrying about their families. We're in better hands with her.
You're an author. What kind of books have you written?
I've tried my hands at a few genres. My crime serials are my most popular. Hard in Hightown, guards breaking the rules to get things done. The Tale of the Champion is the most famous thing I've written, or infamous maybe. I started a romance serial once, Swords and Shields, but to be honest, I don't have a knack for romances. Most of my stories end in tragedy. Probably that says something unfortunate about me personally.
What sort of shops do you own?
Actually, we don't own shops. That was just an example. Mostly we invest in money lenders. Auction houses, a few mercenary companies, a couple of smithies. I think we own half a beet plantation in Ravane somewhere. Most of that's my brother's doing. Bartrand had business sense. Not much tact, but loads of business sense.
How do you and Cassandra know each other?
You heard about the Kirkwall Chantry being destroyed? The guy responsible used to be a friend of mine. The Seeker had questions about that, and I had answers.
Where did you get that crossbow? I've never seen one like it.
Bianca? She's one of a kind. Funny story. I bought a salvage ship and found her locked in a dragonbone reinforced chest in the hold. I broke 3 dozen lockpicks and blunted 9 saws opening that trunk, but it was worth it.
Who is she named for?
I can't tell you.
And the reason for that is...
Complicated. It's the one story I'll never tell. We just have to leave it at that.
Thanks, Varric.
No problem.
Her gracious lady there.
I'll be back if I need you.
Go on.
Yes, fix the door just like you asked, Flitter.
These truths the Maker has revealed to me.
Yes?
Can you tell me more about the Seekers?
The Seekers of Truth were born from the original Inquisition long ago, when it united with the Chantry. Seekers stood above the Templars, watching over them but also investigating magical events they couldn't handle. We were meant to be incorruptible, above reproach. How seldom does reality match the ideal?
But what are Seekers exactly?
Those who know anything of us think we are Templars. We do not use lyrium, however. Our abilities are different, as was our original purpose. We disciplined the Templars and were accountable only to the Divine. And not even her, truthfully.
Sounds like the Seekers didn't do their job very well.
No, probably not. The Templars have always feared us. When a Seeker arrived at a circle, they knew trouble was afoot. That kind of power is troubling. You begin to think you are the only one who can solve the world's problems. If you don't see a problem, it doesn't exist. If someone insists it does, they are the blind ones.
Do you think that kind of problem could ever be fixed?
Possibly. Though the Seekers themselves would need to change. They were clearly not willing to, even though they abandoned everything they stood for to avoid it. In my heart, I believe they can still be salvaged, but not by their own hands.
You mentioned that Seekers have different abilities than Templars.
Entirely. A Templar's abilities come from lyrium and are designed to hunt mages. Ours come from ritual and many years of dedicated training. We cannot be possessed by demons and are immune to mind control. Useful, considering our role. Seekers can gain other gifts, though that depends on the individual.
What kind of gifts do you have?
I can set the lyrium within a person's blood aflame. Both mages and Templars bend before my will. Some Seekers use it to interrogate, others simply to paralyze. Once there was a Seeker who could use it to kill. That particular gift is considered rare.
Why did your order turn against the Chantry?
We originally united with the Chantry through a treaty that stated they would keep mages under control. It was felt Most Holy had tacitly allowed the Circle of Magi to vote on its independence, thus breaking the treaty. The Seekers saw themselves as justified, and they led the Templars into a war of righteousness.
You sound like you disagree.
We knew what was happening at Kirkwall, where the Mage Rebellion began. We looked into reports of Knight Commander Meredith's harsh treatment of her charges years earlier. But we found so many shocking cases of magical corruption, it was decided her actions were justified. If we'd been there when it happened, if we'd looked harder at the root causes...
You're right. Something should have been done.
When faced with a problem, the Seekers would close ranks and crush it. We would find an answer, but only once we felt we weren't being coerced. The moment the mages voted for independence, our response was predictable. It was difficult to watch.
How does someone become a Seeker?
Most Seekers begin training in their youth. I was much older, an exception due to my noble birth. We train rigorously for years. Our bodies and minds must be elastic to undergo the vigil, and most fail even then.
Is the vigil some kind of initiation?
It is the rite every Seeker must go through in order to summon their gifts. A full year of fasting, prayer, and separation from all distractions, including other people. We empty ourselves of all emotion, focusing only on the purity of our devotion. And the moment it finally ends, it's wonderful. Faith realized. I cannot put it into words.
Was it some kind of magic?
I don't fully understand it, to be honest. If the vigil was not so arduous, I'd say more should attempt it. What if mages never needed to fear possession by demons? I'm told it is impossible, however. I suppose I'll never know the truth of it now.
I have no more questions.
Was there something you needed?
Is there anything I should know?
The Lord Seeker's actions are a mystery, but the Templars will aid us. They cannot sit idle while the breach remains.
What do you think of the people you work with?
Who do you mean?
What do you think of our ambassador?
We have little in common. How she delights in meeting with nobles all day is beyond me. But I enjoy working with her.
How do you like working with Leliana?
The Inquisition would not exist without her. I may not always agree with her methods, but she's more passionate about our cause than anyone. Cassandra may have declared the Inquisition publicly, but Leliana is just as responsible for its formation.
Are you satisfied with the Inquisition's forces?
Our numbers are small, but they suit our needs for the time being. Some Templars have joined us instead of following the Order. They've proven invaluable in training new recruits.
I should let you get back to work.
Make her look at it. So much easier to ignore when it's far away. And to actually walk out of it. To be that close.
I survived. Nothing to crow about.
Nothing to crow about. Do people normally fall out of the sky where you come from? I have to admit, I thought you'd be...
Human?
Yes.
Do you object to my kind?
Of course not. Didn't mean to offend. It's what you do and how you do it that's important. Just one question then. How do you think you fit in with all this?
A few of them worship me and think I'm destined for greatness. I don't disagree.
I don't think I've ever met someone quite so proud of who they are. It's... refreshing. Suppose being called Andraste's Herald must go to your head. For me, I'll be satisfied so long as we find the bastards that killed the Divine. They owe us some answers. I've heard rumors of abandoned Warden camps all over these parts. If we have time, I'd like to take a look. See if there's anything we can salvage.
Let's talk about the Grey Wardens. You must know a lot about them.
Ah, the Wardens. I'm afraid we're less exciting than we seem.
The Blight's been over for 10 years. What do Wardens do when the world's not ending?
There is still Darkspawn. Just because we killed so many in Ferelden doesn't mean they're gone. And the world is not so peaceful that there's no use for good men with swords. Sometimes you have to figure out for yourself what the pledge to protect others really means. It's not always about just archdemons and blights.
Where were you during the Blight?
I was in Ferelden, on my own, like always. Quietly killed my fair share of Darkspawn too.
You haven't had contact with other Wardens for a while. Why were you on your own?
It's what I've always done. Recruitment only requires one man. Besides, I've always been a loner. Works best for everyone that way.
So you have no idea where the rest of the Wardens are?
Do you find that odd? The Blight is over. You don't need an organized force. And orders don't change much from day to day. For the last 1,000 years or so, it's been just find Darkspawn, kill them, repeat as necessary.
Let's continue this at another time.
As you wish. I'll be here if you need me. I'm here.
I want to hear more about you.
Compared to yours, my life will seem dull indeed.
Your name Blackwall doesn't sound Orlesian. Marcher, then? Ferelden?
I was from the Free Marchers originally. Markham. That was a long time ago. Another life.
I hear that many Wardens were once criminals.
You're right. And when you join, your past is forgotten, so let's leave it that way.
What did you do before you became a Warden?
I was a soldier, a nobody trained to wield a sword and follow orders. I grew weary of fighting other men's wars.
So you became a Warden?
More or less. Becoming a Grey Warden was the first time I felt like I mattered. The life I led before seems hollow in comparison. Perhaps one day it will fade away.
Why did you join the Wardens?
Because they remember honor and sacrifice. Words that have little meaning to the rest of us. Because they lay down their lives for those they have sworn to protect. We all need to believe there are such men in the world. I needed to believe I could be one of them.
We can continue this discussion at another time.
Very well.
Can I help you?
Can I help you with anything?
I'd like to know more about the Iron Bull.
The Chief. Last time I met him, he saved my life. I never thought I'd work for Qunari, but he grows on you. He's not like any commander I've ever worked for. That's for damn sure.
How's Iron Bull as a commander?
If you know what you're doing and hold up your end, he's easy. He doesn't accept any less. If he keeps us alive, he leads from the front, and if you've an idea that'll win the fight, he listens. I've seen bands whose captains had to prove they were swinging the biggest sword. Bull isn't like that. The charges might give him more lip than you'd expect, but every one of us would lay down our lives for the big ass.
How did a Tevinter soldier wind up in a Qunari spy's mercenary company?
I wasn't a soldier at the time. I was in some trouble, trying to flee Tevinter. A Tribune and his men caught me in a border town tavern. They meant to make an example of me. Bull killed them. Gave up his eye doing it. Patched me up and asked if I was looking for work. I've been putting up with his jokes ever since.
That's how he lost the eye?
Yes. The guards had me on the tavern floor when Bull came inside and yelled for them to stop. One of them saw trouble coming and figured he'd finish me off. The guard had a flare. Bull put himself between me and the blow. Big-horned idiot. Didn't even know me.
Is it strange to work for a Qunari?
He hasn't tried to convert us to the Qun, if that's what you're asking. Bull's charges don't care who you light a candle for, so long as your shield stays up. If he hadn't told me he was Ben Hasroth, I'd have thought he'd left that life behind.
I didn't expect he'd tell you all that he was a spy.
Not the whole band, but those who've been around long enough to trust. He figures most of us would find out sooner or later, and it should come from him. Eyes to eye, he says. It's never messed up a job. He just writes letters back home. Lots of the boys write letters back home.
We'll talk later.
With passioned breath does the darkness creep. It is the
I
Saw the leader of the Bull's charges, that Iron Bull?
Yes? I wanted to ask you about the Circle of Magi.
Of course. What do you wish to know?
What was it like to live in a circle?
My dear, your question is the root of all problems with mages. I cannot tell you. Every circle was different. Their Templars were different, their politics unique. And every person within each tower had an experience of circle life unique to themselves. Some people suffered and some were content. Some were cruel, some compassionate, and some indifferent. The same is true of people everywhere, in all circumstances, whether they are mages or not.
So tell me about your personal experience with the Circle.
I enjoyed life in the Montsimard Circle, my dear. It was an edifice devoted to knowledge and refinement. And mages need the company of other mages. No one else can truly understand the challenges we face, nor see the world as we do.
You must have been under constant supervision, being forced by Templars to live in the tower. Was that hard to endure?
My dear, I have a suite in the palace and a wing at my dear Duke Bastien's estate. I've never been forced to live anywhere. Most circles allowed mages to live away from the tower, either on their own or in service to the nobility. All that was required was permission from the first enchanter. Some circles were harsher in their restrictions. Kirkwall was the worst, but it was the exception. Most were quite permissive. Perhaps too permissive, in retrospect.
You must have an opinion of the Templars after living so long in the Circle.
Having opinions about Templars, my dear, is exactly like having opinions about mages or Navarrans or men. I have known some who were impossible to endure and some who were utterly charming. I have suffered insults at the hands of those in the armor, but no more than I endured from nobles or tradesmen in Val Royaux. Personally, I have found the Templars a useful tool, skilled at keeping more unpleasant elements at bay.